Alright, this is actually one of the more fundamental questions that you need to learn, so let's look at this. Fortune cookies were invented in Japan, and many people assume that it was China. Okay, so remember, A in this case is always the same as the original sentence, but in the paragraph editing section of the SATs, remember A is actually not the same as the answer, or it doesn't have to be. Oftentimes it is, but A is actually a different answer choice. So remember, you should do all questions the same way, right? Subject, verb, and what's the main idea of the sentence. And you should find out what the non-essential information is. So in this case, cookies were invented in Japan. That's the main idea. And I think what they're trying to say is that, a lot of people think it's actually from China. Right? It was invented in China, right? So let's look at these questions. We'll skip A for now. We'll come back to it. B says many people assuming China, right? Assuming China. It doesn't even say in China, assuming China. So people assume China, right? Not assume they were invented in China. So it can't be B. What about C? Okay, this is good. Actually, in B, it doesn't even have a contrast, and it looks like they want to give a contrast, right? Because China and Japan, they're completely different countries, even though they're in Asia, right? So C, this sounds very natural, and a lot of students actually pick C, right? But many people assume it to be China. Okay, so yeah, okay, I kind of agree with this but part, right? Many people assume it to be China. Right? So invention to be China. That makes no sense, right? So cookies were invented in Japan, and in C it says people assume it to be China. That's not parallel in the sense that it was invented in Japan, but in C it says assume it to be China, right? Not parallel, so we can't have C as an answer. What about D? D also has a contrast, not, right? Not what many people assume being, right? This is just a whole jumble of words, and being, I told you, when you see the word being over here, you should be very, very cautious, and in this case this is just nonsense. So the correct answer is E. Okay, E says, so what is the non-essential information that we just learned about, right? The main idea is fortune cookies were invented in Japan, not in China. Right? That's the main idea. And so what is the extra information or extra phrase that they inserted in here? The non-essential information. It's this. As many people assume. So what do many people assume? That they were invented in China. Right? So fortune cookies were invented in Japan, not, as many people assume, in China. Right? And that sounds really good. And you could even take this out to make sure it makes sense. Right? Not in China. Invented in Japan. In China. That's parallel. Right? And what's extra is this phrase over here. Let's look at A now, right? The original sentence that we didn't consider, right? Let's look at A. Were invented in Japan, and, so complete different idea, many people assume that it was China. Okay, now see if this makes any logical sense, right? There is no contrast here at all, right? So they linked the sentence with the word and, many people that it was China. No contrast at all, so it can't be A. So the correct answer is E, and this is part of the lesson on non-essential information. And if you got this one wrong, really, try to understand why, because this type of question comes out all the time. I've seen it in so many different questions.